Okay, ready?
Very good.
So, first question for you is, I know that the World Bank has this movement called the World Bank Climate Change Action Plan. So, what is the what are young people's role exactly in this, or what do you see young people doing to help this plan?
Well, I think there's a number of things that young people can do. Mainly, and it's very important because it's young, as you know, it's going to be young people that will feel the benefits of climate change. If you look at the kind of action that you'll need in order to combat climate change, it's going to take work across a large number of sectors: energy, transport, urban development, agriculture. And it's going to take a wide range of skills: technical skills, economic skills, social skills, mobilization skills. And so I think as young people think about what their roles are in the future, building technical skills that are relevant to climate change, the scientific skills, the social skills, the economic skills, but also the integration skills, the ability to talk to colleagues with different kinds of skills, different kinds of backgrounds, so that when one might be in the field of water, one can also understand economic perspectives, infrastructure perspectives, put them all together. So I think that's the first one, developing the deep skills, but also a broad set of social skills in order to respond. Second one would be around political action, making the voice of young people heard. You know, with the US election coming up, there's a lot of talk about how do you mobilize millennials. And there's an important role for millennials in many elections. And so how do they make their voice known to raise the issues that are of concern for them? I'm from South Africa. You think back in the 1970s, early 1980s, it was young people that moved the political debate forward by coming out on the streets, by demonstrating, by making their voices known, by demonstrating about the quality of education, that helped shift the political tide. If you think in Germany, again, also I'm dating myself, the sort of the mid to late 1980s, that political change was also driven a lot by young people voicing their demands, climbing the wall, crossing the border. And I think the kinds of changes that we're looking at now in terms of climate change are very similar to the kinds of changes that we had to go through in South Africa and that came about with the reunification of Germany. So I think combined with these technical kinds of skills, there's also this business of social mobilization, political involvement in order to make their voice known. I think that's very important.
Okay. So since you are in the private sector, what kind of partnership do you see young people in the private sector having regarding climate change?
I think it's very clear that climate change is going to require two things. One is a large amount of private sector investment, and the second thing is innovation. So at least in the short term, it's quite difficult for young people to mobilize huge amounts of financing. But as they move through their careers into more senior positions in corporations, in the private sector, there'll be a role for that. But I think this question of innovation is probably more important. If you look at where innovation has come from, it's Steve Jobs, Facebook, all of this it came from young people. It came from people thinking outside of the box to focus on trying to meet a specific need. So I think there's an important role for young people in driving innovation, not thinking so much about, okay, this is the way it was done in the past, but what is a different way to think about battery storage if you've got that kind of technical skills, or how to deploy rooftop solars more effectively with a new business model, how to get information out to mobilize people socially using new social media. So I think pushing that role of innovation is very important for young people.
So the Sustainable Development Goals and some of the things that have been going on in the UN for the past couple of days, these are very big movements, or they require really big goals. So how do you think that young people can actually work towards these in their everyday lives? Like, what do you think they would have to do to achieve such large goals that have been set?
Well, I think by nature, these goals are very ambitious, and they talk about overall planning and priorities for countries. So if you're talking about a goal that might be related to nutrition, okay, this is going to be about how do you grow food to feed the billion people that are now malnourished, plus all of the extra people that are coming into the world in a climate challenged world. These are big challenges. So I think it's often difficult for a young person, maybe at the start of their career as they're going through college, to think about how can they have a direct impact on these sorts of issues. But I think a few things that might be options. One is to choose careers and to choose paths that will actually contribute to meeting these big goals. You know, you can have a choice. You can go to Wall Street and make $1 million a year, or you can start working on building a platform, building the skills, building the networks and the career that will help address feeding 1 billion more people. And so I think trying to position oneself in a career that allows one over time to address these issues would be important. In terms of day-to-day lives, there's a number of things that can be done in terms of food waste, for example.
Right.
If we could reduce all food waste and reuse food much more than we do, this would have a significant impact not only on the amount of food available and feeding more people with lower environmental impacts, but it'll also have a huge impact on the environment. Day-to-day things like switching to renewable sources of energy. You don't need to put the solar panels on your house. You can simply check the box and ask your utility to provide clean fuel, clean energy. Switching once, maybe not the extreme youth, but as you get a little bit older, switching to a Prius rather than an old second-hand vehicle, switching off the lights. A number of these things are things that people can do.
Okay. And then last question, well, second to last question actually, how is the World Bank making sure that fossil fuels are staying in the ground and not being used?
So there's a few things. One is we're working to really help countries develop competitive alternatives, renewable energy in particular. So we're working with a number of countries to change the way in which they bid for renewable energy to try and drive the price of renewable energy down, the way we've seen in South Africa or Mexico, where it's gone from 7 or 8 cents a kilowatt hour, in Mexico now down to less than 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And when it gets competitive like that, it's easy for countries to switch over. That would be the first point. Second point is that if you look at the reduction that you're going to need in greenhouse gas emissions in order to reach 2 degrees centigrade, half of that will come from renewable energy, but half of that will have to come from energy efficiency. So helping countries, utilities, cities reduce their carbon footprint is very important. And then the third one, which we think is going to be critical in moving forward, is advocating to put a price on carbon. Because we believe if you had a price on carbon, this would create the incentives for people to switch into renewables, to reduce the consumption of energy, and it would also provide financing for governments to allow them to invest in things like renewable energy.
Okay. Now my last question is, what's your message to youth everywhere who are actively trying to fight climate change?
Go for it. Keep at it. I think the passion is critical, that voice is critical. But then secondly, to think tactically about where you can have the most impact. So loud voice is yes important, but where could you try and be influential? How could you get involved in local level political campaigns? How could you think about in your career how you develop in ways that can shape this agenda going forward? It's your futures, it's your opportunity, and I think a lot of it comes from having the courage and the commitment to say this is important, we're going to stick with it, and we might not know what the answers are, we might not know all the solutions, we might not, in fact, none of us know all the technologies to get the world below a 2-degree scenario. But having the courage to move forward and say it's worth investing my time, my energy, my creativity together with my colleagues, that's important going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.